as we get a chance to catch up with one of the top agents, of course, a long time around the game, 40 years, has represented guys, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Bruce Smith, a lot of Super Bowl memories. But, Leigh, it's good to have you on the day of the State of the NFL address. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm over at Radio Row, the seventh wonder of the world.
It gets bigger and bigger every year. We were there in New York a couple of years ago, and it never seems to amaze you how that thing keeps getting bigger. But the league's getting bigger. There's more issues that come up, and I'd love to get some of your takes from an agent's perspective on just a couple of the things that the commissioner talked about today. One, this is one that really stood out to me, and you're an agent of many players and players coming into the league. Roger Goodell seems to hammer home that the Thursday night games are better games. There's less injuries. There's less turnovers. There's less penalties. He's trying to pitch that the players like it and it's a better game. Are you buying into that at all?
No, I don't think that's been borne out. First of all, they seem to get the last the runt of the litter in terms of great matchups. So you tend not to be watching the greatest teams in key matchups, except for that very first Thursday game that starts out the season. But that would be true whatever night it was on. So anytime you take players irregularly out of a schedule that has to last them for 17 weeks, and you start to take a brutal physical game that you play on Sunday and start to feel normal about 3 or 4 days later, and then tell someone to play Thursday, that's just abnormal. And whatever the stats say, players feel they're vulnerable there, and the fact that they get then 10 days off, it puts them further out of schedule. So it's a tough physical game, unlike the other sports, where just playing the game normally is going to get you injured within your and my definition of injury, not in football's definition. Because if you're walking, you can play.
So the players don't like it?
No, they don't like it. It's not only is it a Thursday game, it's a Thursday night game. So depending on what part of the country that you're playing in, you're playing on the West Coast, those games start at 5:30, and the East Coast they start at 8:30. But, you can be playing football at midnight, which probably on a diurnal clock system is not exactly what you're looking for. That game is there for one reason only. It gives the league a chance to sell another game. But just to put that in perspective, when I started representing players back in 1975 with Steve Bartkowski, who was the first pick in the first round of the draft, teams got $2 million as their share of the NFL group shared national television revenue. Last summer, they cashed a check for $226 million. They're not exactly just scraping by. And, that is a game that's really unnecessary. And I don't know if you remember Les Moonves talking about it, but someone asked him how much he was going to lose. And I think he said, well, I'd probably lose $100 million, but, it's a good loss leader. So even the people buying it know that they're not getting the same bang for their dollar.
Yeah, it feels like something's going to have to give in the sports rights, packages in the amount of money that the ratings were down this year, although that doesn't mean ad revenue was down. Leigh Steinberg's with us. I want to get your take, too, on, your role as an agent and new GMs every year, coaching. It seems like the league is constantly spinning, and how that has impacted you as an agent. I mean, you're going to be representing clients, particularly in San Francisco with a guy, John Lynch, who's never done that before. You got young guys coming into the league all the time. How that dynamic has changed for you?
Well, I think it's true, though, in any business. And what you're getting in football behind the scenes is more people from business school and law school. So it's one thing to have someone from a football background who gets offended if you mention anything about football. But in some ways, it's easier to talk to someone who's in this from business or law school or just a regular perspective. You mentioned John Lynch. John Lynch was my client for 9 or 10 years.
Oh.
And so, very bright, represented him as he came out of Stanford. So this has always been a rotational situation. What's different now is that the patience level, the willingness to build over time, the willingness to have a system and give it long enough to work starts to have been lost. And so, and it's true in every aspect of the game. My specialty has been quarterbacks. Well, quarterback gets drafted high, gets paid a lot of money. Guess what happens? They push him into service right away. What used to be 3 or 4 years, and we would judge how effective that quarterback is now 3 or 4 games. And so it really is an impatience with anything but instant victory and instant success, and sometimes it takes a while.
So Leigh Steinberg is with us, NFL agent. You talk about the quarterbacks, the development of them. One of yours, Paxton Lynch. Were you happy with the way his year went, playing behind a relative unknown in Trevor Siemian? Were you happy to see that they sat him for most of the season then?
Well, here's the thing, that any quarterback who comes out of what the system is played at most college universities, which is a spread or air raid offense, it's not a pro offense. So you're always going to get people raising questions as to how ready, how fast, how soon that quarterback will be ready to make what is a huge leap into the next level. So he only got 2 starts. But, here was the difference. The difference was this. Denver was trying to make it to the Super Bowl, like now. And so they're picking a more experienced quarterback to start, I understood. With new coaching, they'll probably have a new scheme, and they'll be able to put plays in that play to Paxton's strengths so he can throw the ball deep down the field. He can, he's a very good scrambler. So I think he'll compete and win the job this year, and it'll be off to a great future. The fact that the first year wasn't instant starting, that's the way that Carson Palmer, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, a variety of other pretty good quarterbacks came into football.
Hey, a big topic today and over the last couple of weeks has been San Diego moving to L.A., the Raiders trying to move to Vegas. That seems to have a hitch. What is your take on these, the relocation? Is there anything the NFL could do better? 50-plus years in San Diego and whoop, out of there. It seems like it's not right, but that's the way business works. What is your take?
So my take's like yours, that fan loyalty ultimately is what keeps any league alive. And when you allow franchises to move, unless there's just stunning economic reasons that they can't stay in business, it breaks the hearts of fans. And remember what happens here. In other words, the New York Giants claim to be your New York Giants, and it implies your responsibility and loyalty to root for them through thick and thin, to support them, watch them on television, even if they have a losing season. It's then inconsistent to turn around and say, well, we're leaving. So I think the NFL should have tried harder to keep the Chargers there and had used their extraordinary power to broker some sort of a deal for a new stadium. This is all about stadia and franchise values now. It had nothing to do with fan loyalty. I live in Southern California. We did not need a second team. We're just adjusting to the Rams being back. But if you put a stop to all this, the league also has to be willing to occasionally expand. So if you think Las Vegas is a venue that needs a team, give it an expansion team. You don't need to take one of the pre-existing teams. So I think that what's ruling the roost here is that every time there's a brand new stadium, every other owner can use it up as a bully pulpit to say, if you don't give me one like this, I'm leaving. And the effect on franchise value, well, the Rams leave St. Louis, they come to Los Angeles, and their franchise value, which is around $1 million, all of a sudden is up to $1 billion. I don't want to sound like Dr. Evil, but so it starts at $1 billion, now worth $3 billion. So that's the effect on franchise value.
Leigh Steinberg.
And go ahead.
No, this topic to me is crazy because of this whole the Vegas component now, and now there's some talk that, well, San Diego is going to try to woo the Raiders. So it's just like, really, San Diego is going to try to get the Raiders today? You just had a team. They left to go
round and round and round they go.
Do you think, though, you mentioned just give them a team. Do you think expanding is a good thing for the NFL? I mean, isn't the product a little diluted to begin with?
Well, it is, but I want you to remember on the other side of this that there's no developmental league. There's no minor leagues.
Which was brought up today, by the way. I don't know if you heard his state of the league, but he did bring that up.
So the point is that if you have a player in another sport, they don't make it in the sport. They go back to D-League or to the minor leagues in baseball, and, they can develop. In football, you may get a few players who get to be on the practice squad, and then beyond that, there's nothing in the way of development. You can't really say the CFL's equivalent or the Arena Football League's equivalent. So we don't really know how much good talent there is. Remember, the salary cap is what's pushing organizations to discard, veteran players, and put rookies in. So when you're talking about dilution, the effect of the salary cap is to handsomely reward 7, 8, 10, 12 players on a team, and then you have to fill in the rest of the roster with players whose contracts are tiny. So I guess my point is that is there enough talent for a couple more teams? Absolutely, and things would be fine. But this whole concept of moving, if they had stopped the Baltimore Colts from leaving Baltimore and going to Indianapolis, if they had stopped the St. Louis Football Cardinals from going to Phoenix, and instead in both those places put expansion franchises, then you never would have had a situation where St. Louis and Baltimore were denied teams, so they took them from other markets, and the whole thing starts to go round and round.
Leigh Steinberg, the 30th annual Leigh Steinberg Super Bowl party is presented by BBVA Compass. That's on Saturday for people in our area who are making the trip to the big game. 40 years of memories. He's got clients from spanning all over. Bruce Smith, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, great stories, I'm sure, as we, of course, have a great day with the State of the NFL address. That was really interesting stuff to hear from him and to hear a lot of your takes. And you'll have the draft coming up, a lot of new entries into the league, Leigh. I know the work never stops.
No, we got a quarterback named Patrick Mahomes, who I think is going to be one of the first quarterbacks picked in the draft. And he's quite got the biggest gun, best arm in the draft, and keep your eye on him.
Saw him a lot. I'm a West Virginia grad, Texas Tech, West Virginia. There's about 150 points a game put up when those two teams get on the field. Pat Mahomes, a lot of another guy for that the Eagles, of course, looking in this area. We got Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, a couple of running backs that you represent as well. So draft time, we'll have to catch back up again, pal.
Great.
Take care. Leigh Steinberg, everybody, here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN.